Hello, hello, blissful parents out there. Michelle Abraham, your host here, and I am delighted to bring you a really special guest today. I've got Annie Henderson with us. Hi, Annie. How are you doing?
I'm so good, Michelle. Thanks for having me here.
Awesome. Well, you're so welcome. We're glad you're here. And blissful parents, let me tell you a little bit more about Annie. So, Annie is a certified professional life coach who specializes as a coming out coach for the LGBTQIA community. I always mess that one up. And helps people pleasers that avoid conflict, over apologize, and struggle to say no, start living authentically, and find the peace they have been missing. And he was also an elementary school counselor in another career. So I love that we have your expertise with us, Annie, today. And Annie is also the host of the Coming Out Loved and Supported podcast. So I just love what you're up to, Annie, and love if you could just start, how did you get into what you're up to today?
So I got into it by this constant journey. And initially, as you mentioned, I work with people pleasers, and that's because I was one for decades, and just always trying to find happiness for myself.
Mhm.
I got on a path of getting married, getting a career, building a house, having a kid, and just trying to check all those boxes that weren't quite fulfilling me like I
Mhm.
had thought that they would. Um, so I got my master's in elementary education, and then school counseling, and then um, professional counseling. And I was at LPC for a while. And uh, then I decided to step away from all of that and kind of go on my own kind of journey and walkabout. And it was kind of interesting because, it was scary to myself in a sense, right? It's a lot of risk taking. My partner, who's a financial advisor, was also like, "Oh, I don't know if that's the best decision," but still very supportive. And then, of course, my family that are more of the 9 to 5
Mhm.
traditional. You have to have retirement and insurance and all that. Were just kind of freaking out mentally and just concerned about me. Not trying to be mean, but just worried. And
Mhm.
um, came into being a coach. And at first, I was a coach for overwhelmed moms. That's where I was thinking, because I was like, no, I have the education background, I have my own kiddo that we're rocking and rolling. This is who I'm going to help. And it wasn't until on my first podcast that was called Happy Mama Village with my co-host, that my co-host interviewed me last year during COVID, when the Pride parades were shut down, and she asked me to tell my coming out story. And at first I was like, like, I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to do that. And I did. And almost immediately I had some people reaching out to me. And of course, a lot of people don't feel like they have someone to talk to about
Mhm.
those areas. So it wasn't like a comment or a review. It was
Mhm. Mhm.
in the DMs where it's nice and private. And one of them I ended up working with, and her daughter had come out, and
Mhm.
she was wanting to help, making sure that she shows up as the best mom and ally, because initially she was struggling with how to balance religion and her daughter's sexuality.
Mhm.
And anyway,
Mhm.
so we got through all of that. She's amazing now and so happy on the other side. Her family is beautiful and growing. So that just was so inspiring. So I was like, okay, this is where I need to be.
Mhm.
This is where I can make the most impact.
Right. Yeah, I love that, making the most impact. And, I think there's definitely a need for support for parents to know like how to support their kids in the best way they can. I mean, I remember in high school, one of my close friends in high school, he didn't come out until he was in his 30s because he was so afraid of what
Yes.
his parents would say and what they would think. And he came out and they love him, like he's just him, like they don't care.
Isn't
But
that
he
beautiful?
just like worked it up so much in his mind that it was causing him so much other stress and anxiety. So, what are some tips that you have for
Mhm.
parents who maybe suspect that their kids, want to come out, but are, just not? And how do we navigate that conversation as parents?
Yeah, that's such a great question because I've worked with some younger clients that haven't come out yet, and sometimes there's this understanding of parents like, oh, I have to let them, come out. And then sometimes the kids are like, just tell me that you know. So there's this stalemate. So it can be
That
interesting.
awkward moment. Everyone
Yeah,
knows it's the elephant in the room, but nobody is saying anything.
exactly, exactly. So sometimes, sorry, my kiddo just came in.
It's okay.
Um, sometimes it is simply, you know, if you continue to have those conversations, right? And it's not like there's a stall out where you don't actually talk to your kids and have that connection for a year. And then suddenly you're trying to have this deep conversation, right?
Yeah.
Having this great relationship that you continue to check in and have those dinners as a family to where you're around each other, if something's off, if they're feeling anxious or depressed or something's going on. Um, and, if it's an uncomfortable place for you,
Mhm.
and maybe you have your own work to do, knowing that that's not about them, that's
Mm.
about you and some work that you need to do. And there's people out, like, I would love to help you. There's other places. If it's in terms of maybe some religious trauma, or maybe you're confused that way. My pastor and I opened up a Facebook group for LGBT and allies.
Mm.
So you can go and you can hear maybe a different perspective, because you might be in this bubble that maybe hasn't evolved, that hasn't stretched and looked into a different understanding of what that can look like. And it can be a scary place. You feel very alone if you don't know anybody that's in a similar situation. You
Mhm.
can kind of keep it all quiet. And, with Brene Brown talking about shame, shame isn't a good thing, especially if we keep it in the dark. So asking questions, doing that research, and doing your own work. That way, when are talking to your kid about it, or saying, you can come to them and honestly say, I love you.
Mhm.
I love you with anything you're going to tell me. And and then seeing what they say from there. And, if they're, still testing the waters with you, because maybe they don't trust you yet, or maybe it's just
Mhm.
scary and new, um, then just being patient about it, and maybe talking about the subject in like a third person,
Right.
right? Talk about,
Yeah.
oh, they talked about this on the news,
Mhm.
or watching some shows where there's some good representation, where you can
Mhm.
have these conversations where, in a safe way, they can see how you feel about the topic without it being directly about them. So it's a little
Mhm.
bit safer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, I like that where it's, you're commenting on something on TV or in the news or to someone else, like how great they found love. That's amazing. Something like that would be probably really helpful for them to
Mhm.
hear. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
That's really cool. That's a great tip. I know it must be challenging for parents. I think that if there's that stalling in that communication, if they're or if they've had a little bit of a rough communication in the past, to kind of mend that communication first before navigating more serious conversations probably would be helpful, right?
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. And knowing, yeah, I love talking to my clients about knowing, your own love language and knowing your kids' love language, and being
mm,
able to use that kind of stuff. Um, this might not be the right time for it, but I'm going to go ahead and say it anyway,
yeah,
just in case
yeah.
there's any misunderstanding. Um, if you are a religious family, and I'm going to say this, and you might not have ever heard it before, or I just want to plant this seed that your kid's not going to go to hell for being okay. And, if I'm the first person to tell you that, I'm glad I'm the first person, and that's fine. And if you need to talk about that more with some pastors, I
Mhm.
have handfuls that can talk to you and help walk you through that process and really get to know it. And it is a little journey, but just had to make sure that that was
Mm.
clear.
Obviously, that's something that's come up quite a bit for you. That's interesting.
Yes.
And is that, is it something like more demographically or a certain kind of religion that seems to come up more? Or
Yeah,
is it
well, so
a
I'm down
wide
in
variety?
Texas.
Yeah.
So the South, right? That's
Yeah.
a big thing. But you know what? I talked to someone recently. It was actually someone that was 17, and they reached
Mm,
out, and they're from the North. And
mm.
just maybe some misunderstanding of my part. I'm always like, the North has it together. But based on how you were raised or the church you're going to,
Mhm.
um,
Play a huge
that
role.
they were currently going to a church that, if you come out, then they're going to ask you not to come back, which is,
Wow.
yeah, which is, when you have a great church, sometimes you forget that what else is out
Mhm.
there.
Yeah, I would
Um,
imagine, yeah, when you're
yeah,
surrounded by, like, such positive, like, influences and also able to express yourself however wherever you go, then to then hear of other people that can is just kind of mind-blowing in this day and
right,
age,
right.
actually.
And even if that's a huge leap for you, where, I've been taught this my whole life, this is the only truth I know, and this doesn't, like, it's hurting my brain, it doesn't make sense.
Mhm.
Being able to know that that's something that you need to go through, and
Mhm.
still being able to show up for your kids and still
Yeah.
being able to support them. Otherwise, they're going to go and get support somewhere else, right? You're
Interesting.
now going to be the enemy, the person that's
Mhm.
not supportive. And then there's going to be other, maybe family or friends, or maybe, the LGBTQIA rate of suicide is
Mm.
super high, and self-harm.
Mhm.
And that's not what you want. So making sure that
Mhm.
you as well have someone to talk to. It's not I'm
Yeah.
going to send my kid to therapy and they'll be fixed and come back, like training a dog. It's my kid might need someone to talk to. I also obviously need someone to talk to, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Do most like high schools nowadays, I'm not in the, some of my kids are still elementary school age, so I'm not sure. But in most high schools now, is there some support in the school system as well for kids that are coming out?
Just
Mm,
depends. There's actually and it depends on the teachers. I think there was a local, where I am, North Texas, but an even smaller town that
mhm,
started like a little club, like an
mhm,
after school club, so you could have support. So I think it is becoming something that's more available, but I
mhm,
would not say it's everywhere. Definitely not.
hmm. Well, one day maybe.
Yeah,
That would
I
be nice.
wish.
Yeah.
I wish.
We're getting there. It's baby steps. That's great. And so, for our parents that are thinking, or maybe some of them might be freaking out inside, where do they look for support? So it's if they don't have friends that are going through similar situations, what would be the best route for them?
Yeah. So in terms of Facebook, even if you're not, some people are like, I'm not on Facebook. Well, it's okay to get on for
Yeah.
specific reasons. Use a fake name, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
You don't have to interact with people, but hop into a group. There's Facebook groups for everything. There's amazing Facebook groups for LGBTQIA moms or
Mhm,
families,
mhm,
so that you have that support, because a lot of times, it is vulnerable to be able
mhm,
to share. If you, a lot of people will go and share with their pastor, but if their pastor has differing views, right? If
mhm.
they're um, a little behind. I'm not trying to be trying
Yeah.
to word this correctly.
Yeah.
Um, that that's not going to be the support that you need. Sometimes it
Yeah.
is, like, our pastors are amazing.
Mhm.
Um, but a Facebook group, right? You'll find people that are in all stages. So some will have, they might suspect their kiddos. Some, their kids have already come out. Some, they're 3 years down the road where they started off being like separated from their kids, and now they've come to a point of, oh my gosh, I had this resource. So in terms of sharing resources, just supporting each other, having a place to celebrate,
Mhm.
right? Because maybe, my kid has their first relationship, and it's
Mhm.
not something that you feel like you can share yet on your Facebook page, but you have
Right.
the community that's rally around you and supports and answers questions that might be hard to get answered.
That's great. Yeah. It's glad to hear that there's support out there for parents
Oh
as
yeah.
well,
Mhm.
especially when it's like, if maybe it's not something they've ever been exposed to or not something that, they're around. They don't really know how to act or how to navigate those waters. So
Mhm,
that's
mhm,
awesome.
and I will say this, make sure it's a good group, right?
Mhm.
Just like anything, there's
Mhm.
good people and bad people and on all areas. If you get into a group and maybe it's very judgmental,
Right, right.
or there's some stuff where you're getting some vibes, and it's not just I'm resistant and I'm sensitive and I'm taking everything personally, but you're like, oh, I don't like this. Then know that there's others out there, so you can be like,
Right,
ooh, I don't like the feel of this one, I'm going to join another one, right?
right. Yeah, that's a good point. No matter what kind of group you're joining, just make sure you vibe with them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you have this amazing podcast coming out, loved and supported. And are there any great episodes in there that you suggest parents go and listen to just support them on their way? Or
Yeah.
even kids,
So
even probably some for the kids, some for the parents, some for both.
you know what? I did have someone write me once and was like, "Can you make an episode for youth?" And I was like, "Sure." And I had like a special one. I don't know what number it is. Um, in number one, the first one, I just share a little bit of my own journey,
Mhm,
which that mom that I mentioned earlier who had reached out to me, she
mhm,
had said that my story helped give her hope because I was on the other side of this and I'm
mhm,
successful. I have a thriving family and all of that stuff. So if you're needing that glimpse of hope, then
mhm.
you can listen to number one. Number eight is actually the one where I interviewed one of my own pastors, Pastor Abby Eccles. And so she talks about, I ask her like, what do you advice do you have for allies? What do you advice do you have for someone that's, scared that they're going to go to hell? All those kind of questions.
Mhm, mhm,
That's in there. I've interviewed a few pastors now, so hearing
oh,
their different versions. And then I have some people that are allies on there, and they
mhm,
show support through maybe their business, right? If you're looking for a wedding venue
mhm.
or stuff like that. So just a nice mixture of people, and some stuff is just good coaching stuff that we all need.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
So great. I love it. Yeah, that's great. So make sure you guys check out Annie's podcast, Coming Out Loved and Supported. I just love the name of it too, because I think that's something that as parents, I'm sure we fear that our kids aren't feeling loved and supported. And as kids, I'm sure they need to feel that love and support from the parents, but maybe are feeling a little apprehensive or maybe not getting that because they're not sure. That's just such one of those things that they're the things that they're going through that they can't communicate, or maybe they don't have a relationship. So I love the love and supported part, 'cause that's such a huge part of it. And I think if anything I've heard you really say today is that really that love and support and that connection between you and your kids, is going to go such a long way for the communication that's going to be able to unfold between you and for them, just knowing that they're supported and loved no matter what is so important.
It is. And yeah, and just reach out, get some help, and know that it doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be, the worst year of your life. It can be, how can we all grow stronger together through this process?
Definitely. I've been able to see so many families uh, go through like such a great experience, like for everyone. Everyone's happy in relationships. There's grandbabies. There's like, I think for some parents that's like the fear, well, I'm not gonna have grandkids now, or like, that's not
Uh-huh,
necessarily
that
the
is.
case, right? Like,
Yes, you'll get
so
them. Go ahead.
yeah, exactly. So I think that's interesting that, it's not life doesn't unfold how we always imagine it to. And like you said, going through all the motions and checking the boxes and doing all the shoulds, like that American dream, I as well like went through that American dream, didn't feel fulfilled, with the house and the car, the education, the husband. And then it was like, then what, right? You got to, and so you don't want your kids going through that either, feeling unfulfilled with what they should be doing. So
Yes,
it's nice
yeah.
to know that they can create, we can support them in creating their own path and their own and being fulfilled themselves. Any suggestions for like how to, for parents to really help support their kids in navigating their own path, they're creating their own dreams without having to follow that, what society's told us all along here.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if I can offer up a resource that's good for all, but especially for parents to start with, and it's a
Hmm.
short book. It's called The Four Agreements by Don
Hmm.
Miguel Ruiz. That's why I have all
Love
of
it.
my clients start with,
Hmm.
right? And it'll really kind of it'll help you do a self-check before helping your kid to make sure, you're not both on shaky ground. You want to be on solid ground before
Hmm.
you can really help your kiddo. So, it talks about not taking things personally, not making assumptions, all things that can kind of come natural and how we're kind of
Hmm.
raised. So grab that book and really soak it in. Don't rush through it, right? It's not another check. I read it, but
Hmm.
read a chapter, let it sink in for a day or two before going to the next one, and see how you can apply it in your life, because that can hold so many people back, just the assumptions. And they're going to be the ones that, it sounds easy and simple, but they're not necessarily common practice.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. I have read that book several years ago, but I now as a parent, I feel like I should go back and read that. I think that
Or
would be great. Yeah.
yes, it's definitely one you could use every year, because, right, we're
Yeah.
new people. We've had new
Yeah.
experiences. So even if you've read it before, give it another go and just see, because what hit you a couple years ago, it'll be a little different this time.
Yeah, it was so inspiring when I was, backpacking through Europe as a teenager. So,
Amazing.
now it's all another chapter of life. So, yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great idea. And I heard you mention the love languages earlier too. So, I think that is also maybe another book that parents can go back and listen to. And actually, it's funny that you mentioned it with as a parenting tool, because I was like, oh yeah, wait, I've read that book, but like more like looking at it from like my husband and I, our love languages, but knowing your kids love language, that's like that's
Oh yeah.
super good too.
Right. So
Yeah.
my family, we definitely all know each other's. I know my daughter is quality time and physical touch, but the
Mm.
interesting thing is she's not necessarily physical touch with everybody. So like
Mm.
mom, she likes to snuggle. Especially as the kiddos get older, maybe asking them like, oh, it says you're this. Is that what you like? Because they might be like, no, like I don't want that from you. And
Not from
asking,
you, maybe from
yeah,
someone else.
asking what that looks like and how it can vary. But there's if you go online, there's a quiz. So if you're
Mm.
like, I don't want to read the book again, or maybe I want to take the quiz and then read the book to
Yeah.
supplement it. Um, there's a couples version, a singles version, and I think maybe a teens or kids version.
Oh,
And there
cool.
might be an age range, but even if you don't, by the time you go through it, you can kind of start guessing at maybe your younger children.
Right.
But so many great insights in that book too.
That's awesome. I love it. And oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank on who wrote that one. The oh
I'm
gosh.
I'm
Hang on.
blanking out too right
I'm gonna
now.
look at I'm gonna look it up right now as we're talking because it's gonna bug me that I don't have it. It is Dr. Gary Chapman, of course.
Yes,
Dr. Gary
gosh.
Chapman. Yes. Discover your love language. So yeah, that's a really great one. And actually this first time that resource has been brought up on the Blissful Parenting
Oh,
podcast. So
yay.
yeah, that's a really unique way of I think it's a great way of getting to know your kids and having those conversations and being able to meet their needs in a way that's not that might not be like what we're thinking first off.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
it's great.
Yes, and there's so many different ways that can look, and little hacks. So yeah, if you ever have questions about that, feel free to reach out, because I do talk about that all the time.
I love it. Well, Annie, it's been so awesome getting to know you and hacking into your resource and your brain there and all the experiences you've had. I think this is really good. It's shed a bit of light on this topic for our parents. And I know if you're out there, parents, and you're struggling or you have some questions or you're just not sure how to navigate things in your household right now, please reach out to Annie. Annie is amazing. And you can find out more information about Annie plus our podcast at anniemhenderson.com. And any last words for our parents, anywhere else you want to send them to find out more information?
Yeah. Gosh, last words, just know that there's always more growth to do, right? There's never a final checkpoint like I've made it, I'm the best, right? Because our kids
What?
keep growing.
No, I was kidding.
Right? My daughter's 14 now. This when she turns 15, it'll be the first time I parent a 15-year-old. So I'm gonna have to keep growing and make sure that I will sneak this in. Um, just because other people say this is their experience doesn't mean it has to be yours. So when people are like, oh, watch out, she's a teenager, I'm like, no, thank you. We're gonna have our own experience, and she's just been amazing and growing as well. So she's very grounded. So just claim your own experience. Don't just take
Mhm.
what other people tell you, and maybe if they've had a rough time, that has to be your own.
I love that advice because we just had Nellie on the show a few episodes ago, and Nellie has 4 teenage daughters right now, and she's having a great time parenting them. Whereas, like when she had them at birth, they were all like, "Oh my God, we'll have to till they become teenagers, right?" So,
Right?
yes, I
Yes.
love that. You know, your experience is your own unique thing. You're a unique person. Your kids are unique. You're gonna navigate your own unique story, right? So, I think that's
That's all
great.
right.
Great advice. I love it. And don't forget to check out Annie's podcast coming out loved and supported. And it's on iTunes and everywhere available to listen to podcasts. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Annie. We'll have a great rest of your day. And Blissful Parents, be sure to check out Annie's information and resources at anniemhenderson.com. All right. Until
Thank
next
you so
time.
much.
Thanks so much, Annie. And Blissful Parents, go out there, have a wonderful rest of your day. Be blissful and reach out if you need some support.